Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 5th episode of the official GBAtemp Friend Simulator, Tempcast. Today I'm joined by Eric.
Hey guys, good to see you again, or hear from you again.
And also special guest Steven.
Hi everybody, how's it going?
And I'm the Alan John, and today we're starting off with the first event that happened in the gaming world this week. NVIDIA is going to be acquiring ARM for around $40 billion. That's billion with a B. That's 40,000 million for those who don't know their maths. Anyways, guys, I just want to get your opinion on, what do you think about this?
It's not something I know a ton about. I know that, actually, you know what? I won't even speculate. I won't even try to give the broken version of what I know. I'll just let you explain it, because this seems to be more up your alley.
Yeah, I'm more curious in hearing what Alan John has to say about it.
Okay, so I'm going to explain this as if you were 5-year-olds. So, in the CPU world, there are two dominating architectures. It's x86 and ARM. All right? What does that mean? x86 is what your desktop computers are running on right now, probably. If you have an AMD processor, or if you have a Intel processor, or if you have that Chinese processor that's given only to Chinese government workers, it's all x86. And ARM is probably what you have on your mobile phones, or maybe even your consoles, your mobile consoles, because the Xbox and PlayStation use x86. You might have heard of other architectures such as PowerPC, which were used in the Wii and the Wii U and the GameCube, I think. But right now, the most popular ones is Intel's x86 and ARM. Now, I'm not going to go into details as to what are the structural differences between these architectures, but basically ARM was made from the ground up for mobile machines, meaning it uses less power, less energy, and it's basically just more efficient that way, but it's not made for big computing tasks like x86, something you do on a desktop. It was made for more for PDAs, mobile phones even, simple stuff. But as time goes on, the architecture of ARM has become better and better, with different players in the game improving upon it. One of them being, say, Qualcomm with their Snapdragon processors, which are all ARM-based. And even Apple with their Bionic A series chips. I don't know what they're called, but just recently you had the Apple event, and they announced that the new iPad Air is going to use their latest A14 processor. That's an ARM-based chip. And also their new MacBooks are going to be switching to ARM. That was a very, very big event. What this basically means is that ARM with time has become better and better, more efficient. x86, only AMD is pushing really the limits with their high core counts, with their hyper-threading capabilities. Intel has stagnated. AMD's been going lower and lower in the nanometers. They're up to 7 nanometers. Apple is at 5 nanometers now. Samsung, Qualcomm, they're all going to be there, and Intel is just still at 14 nanometers. Ew. And they're only planning to switch to 10. They're just planning it. And that's an entirely different story. What this NVIDIA buying ARM, what it means, I don't know. I honestly don't know. ARM as an architecture was owned by a Chinese company called SoftBank.
I thought it was a British company. Are you sure it's Chinese?
It might be Chinese.
SoftBank?
SoftBank? I don't know. We should Google that, actually. We should do some research before recording a podcast, really. SoftBank. SoftBank is a Japanese multinational conglomerate holding company headquartered in Minato, Tokyo. So we were both wrong. It's It's Japanese. It's the Japanese.
But Eric was wrong in a racist way, at least.
No, I wasn't.
No, actually, if you think about it, I was the one who's racist because you could pin it on me thinking that, Chinese, Japanese, what's the difference,
Oh, I thought you thought they were Chinese. Never mind. You're the racist one. I apologize.
Thank you.
I am the
Sorry,
racist
Eric.
one. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, no, I know that ARM, that I don't know. I'm gonna stop talking. I thought something's British about this whole situation. I can just smell it.
Yeah. So ARM is basically it's like an IP. It's like Mario, right? Actually, no. I don't think you can. It's like shit. I can't really make like a good analogy about this. So yeah, it's like an IP. You can pay SoftBank for the license to produce ARM-based processors because it's like a CPU architecture, and you can create a CPU based on that architecture with your own modifications. Absolutely, sure. Like as long as it's still like ARM, you still have to pay for using that license. Basically, if you own ARM, the IP, the architecture, it means that you get to dictate who basically gets contracts or licenses to use this architecture. So, NVIDIA, we know NVIDIA as the big graphics card company. They make the GTX, the RTX series graphics cards. Okay, there's a dog outside and he's barking, and I should close the window. So, yeah, it's actually not the worst option because SoftBank has been eyeing to sell ARM for a long time, and there were rumors that Intel or even Apple could have bought ARM, and imagine what kind of a shit show it would have been if Apple bought ARM. That would basically, they'd say to Samsung, to Qualcomm, okay, you guys can't make ARM processors anymore. Okay, figure it out. That's it. So
Yeah.
that would have been bad. But from what I understand, NVIDIA, now that if it actually goes with this acquisition, because it still has to be like approved in different countries, I don't think they can cancel contracts or licenses that were already given. So there's that.
They also wouldn't have much reason to cancel those contracts or licenses, right? Like,
Yeah, because they don't really. NVIDIA doesn't really compete with Qualcomm. They don't compete with Snapdragon processors. They don't compete with Apple, really, if you think about it.
no.
But it's funny because Apple actually used to have NVIDIA graphics cards in their MacBooks and Mac Pros or in their machines. But then
Yeah.
they had part ways due to differences, I guess. So now they might have to renegotiate whenever that ARM license expires. So that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But here's the interesting part. Guys, I don't know how educated you are on the CPU architecture of the Switch.
Not at all.
Guess what? It's a Tegra processor. You know what architecture Tegra runs on?
Tell me.
It's not Intel x86. It's not PowerPC. Take a guess.
ARM.
Holy shit. Yes, Eric, you are correct. Yes.
Oh, RAM. It's powered by RAM. I got it.
No. You're getting it wrong. Please, no.
No, wrong order. It's RAM. That's the computer thing. RAM.
So, NVIDIA creates Tegra. Tegra runs on ARM. So, next Tegra, NVIDIA doesn't have to pay for another ARM license because they own it. All right? Listen to me. Not also did they buy out the IP, they've also acquired their ARM's research and development presence in the UK. Wow, Eric was right. So
Hey.
Yeah, it does have something to
Woo!
do with the United Kingdom.
I told you, I could smell it. I could smell it coming. I knew that there was something British about this.
You
Yeah.
smell the fish and chips coming all the way across the ocean.
And so, they're saying, well, we're going to use that research and development center in Cambridge, and we're going to build like a NVIDIA slash ARM powered AI supercomputer. This is officially what they said. I got a different idea. I don't think NVIDIA's building a supercomputer. Well, maybe they are, but not the type we think. Guys, listen me out. You heard the rumors recently that Nintendo's asking their developers prepare for 4K,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
right? Guys, what if, just listen, the next Switch, it's got an ARM-based supercomputer thing from NVIDIA, and it's the best processor ever. It blows out the water, the PlayStation 5, the Xbox Series X. It plays games at 8K, AI upscaling. It does everything. Yeah. And it's going to be cheaper because, and Nintendo's got a deal with NVIDIA. NVIDIA doesn't have to pay for ARM. It makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Aside from the 40 billion they already paid. They got to make that money back somewhere. But I hear what you're saying. I mean, it doesn't even need to go as far as to be a supercomputer that's better than everything else. There is a possibility it could at least be competitive with the current consoles.
Yeah, well, I'm just joking. Like, I don't think,
Yeah.
the Switch 2 is going to have a supercomputer in it. No, but definitely, I expect the next Tegra processors to be absolutely better thanks to this acquisition. Like, who knows what having access to all that stuff means for NVIDIA and for their development. Honestly, got no idea. So,
Yeah. Because the Switch right now is already running on an ARM architecture, right?
yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah, 'cause
But it's actually quite outdated if you think about it. It's been around for a long time, and NVIDIA's been getting a lot of progress in their research and development. Like, just looking at Ampere, their new graphics cards, and what they've achieved there in the past couple of years. I'd imagine they'd improved a lot on Tegra, and they've got something cooking. No, it all depends really on Nintendo if they want to go along with that. I really hope, because Nintendo plus Nvidia, that's good stuff right there. It's a match made in heaven, really. Nvidia's with their DLSS technology. I'm probably like a broken record talking about it already. They're probably the only realistic way Nintendo's ever gonna play 4K games.
Yeah, it's interesting though. Does seem to be a lot of movement development happening with Nvidia right now, and it is kind of exciting, all these possibilities. It's like you said, with a company as weird as Nintendo, who knows if they'd latch onto it and actually do anything with this, but it's hard to hope. You gotta hope that they do, like, because being able to be competitive in the graphics space would be huge for them. They haven't really been there in a very, very long time, and they wouldn't have to sacrifice any of the other things they've been doing.
The only thing that I know is that clearly many, many, many NVIDIA investors are listening to our podcast because since we started talking, the stock price of NVIDIA has actually gone up a whole percent. So I'm going to take credit for that. Actually, I'll give the Allen John some credit for it, but mostly me. The thing about it is because it went up a whole percent, it is now only down today 3%. So it was down 4%, but now it's only down 3% because of us. And I'm still losing too much money off of it. But I'm hoping
Wait,
that
you invested in Nvidia?
the only times that I ever talk about stocks on the podcast is when I'm invested in it. That's why I haven't ever talked about Nintendo stock. But yeah, I'm invested in Nvidia.
What made you decide to invest in Nvidia if you don't really follow that stuff that closely?
Uh, because it prints money. Money machine goes burr. I listen to what people tell me to do on the Wall Street Bets subreddit, and I just kind of go for it.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I heard bad things about that subreddit. I've been told to stay away from it as much as possible.
Yeah, definitely. I'm also entirely joking. Please do not take any of their advice. No, I just looked at the history of NVIDIA. In the past 5 years, it's gone up 2,000%. So,
Wow.
yeah, they exploded in popularity. And so I'm not actually losing money off of them. I'm just not gaining as much as I was supposed to. That's
Yeah,
all
well,
right.
I imagine a big purchase like that would usually spell a like short-term downfall for their stock, and then hopefully as that investment pays off, it would shoot right back up. I
Yeah,
imagine, right?
yeah, yeah. That's assuming that stocks follow the trends that they're supposed to follow and what old people have been saying they've been following for years. Uh, there's some stocks that just make no sense, like Tesla, where it just skyrockets for no reason. NVIDIA might have a little bit of both.
Oh,
It
okay.
doesn't always make sense. You can never predict it. But yep, it's gone down today, but it's gone up since we started talking. So that's us. Good job, guys.
So
We're not even live
let's
yet.
keep talking.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna have three of us are gonna have to buy stock in it right before this podcast
Wait,
publishes.
Eric, since you're a lawyer, I need to ask you right this. Let's say we know for a fact that every time a podcast like releases, Nvidia stock goes up. If I buy Nvidia stock before uploading a podcast, is that insider trading? Will I go to jail for that? Is that possible?
I don't think you would go to jail for that. But what do I know?
Ask him in a few weeks.
Ba-da-da-da-da-da. Yeah, ask me later.
I would say no because you'd be the one affecting the change, right? You're not getting. I don't know.
Because I do know. But I won't tell you.
he's gonna he's gonna get you to do it, so then you can be
Yeah.
his first big bust. That's how lawyers work, right? They need
Yeah.
to make
They
arrests.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure prosecutors do that. Like, if my memory of Ace Attorney doesn't fail
Do
me.
they? Is that how it works?
Yeah, that what attorneys do is they get people to go to jail so that they can then represent them to get them out and get paid. That's my strategy.
Oh, I love that. That's interesting.
Yeah. But
I like to imagine you have an angry sergeant that's telling you to go find people and put them in jail so that you can then defend
yeah,
them.
that's pretty much what happens. Speaking of things of sort of limited legality or sort of gray area legality, did you guys hear? Of course, I'm sure you have that Mario 3D All-Stars actually leaked a couple days ago before release date, and everybody's talking about it. Speaking of that little gray moral area. So what do you guys think about that?
Yeah. Well, what interested me the most was how quickly, you know, fans over the internet were able to hack the game, not hack it, but decompile it, scrub through the data, and find out some very, very interesting things about this collection.
Yep.
Hmm.
Sorry, I'm actually looking at the Super Mario 3D All Stars hacking Discord right now because a lot of the conversation, there were a few threads on GBAtemp where people were trying to put things together on it, and a lot of the conversation has moved to Discord, as I understand it.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been trying to get a handle on what people are doing with it, but the basic is that pretty quickly after the game came out, people figured out that it is in fact an emulated. These games are
Hmm.
being emulated. Super Mario 64 and Sunshine are pure emulation, I believe, and Galaxy is partially being emulated,
Yep.
which I didn't know was a thing, but apparently it is. And so what that means is that hypothetically, people should be able to find a way to take out the ROM essentially for 64 or Sunshine, and figure out a way to sub in other ROMs and get Nintendo 64 and GameCube emulation working on the Switch, thanks to a structure provided by Nintendo. As of right now, no one has actually gotten anything working. I saw someone was able to get, say, the opening video for Sonic Heroes to work in the place of the opening video of Sunshine.
Nice.
But it still had the Sunshine audio, and it still had, and then after that video, it still loaded into Sunshine normally. So there are, minor steps being made. I think I saw a couple of games that would boot, but then would crash before it actually got to, the title screen. So there's nothing really usable yet, and something I was trying to figure it out because there have been other situations like this before. Like I believe when Parappa the Rapper 2 came out on PS4, it was a similar thing, and people used that to start modding PSP emulation on the PS4.
Oh.
I haven't really been able to find a solid timeline on how long this kind of thing normally takes. I mean, this only leaked on Tuesday, I think, so I don't think anyone expected anything usable by now. No one would expect it this quickly, but there are people working on it. There's a lot of stuff happening, so I am interested to see how long it takes. I just don't really have a firm idea yet of when something might happen.
Yeah, well, I'll just give my 2 cents. I really doubt that injecting other ROMs, ISOs into the GameCube or even like the N64 emulator is going to get any results simply because, like you said, this has happened previously, but specifically concerning Nintendo, it happened in the Wii and I guess in the Wii U era with the Virtual Console games because around 20 or so N64 games were ported to the Virtual Console on the Wii, and
Yep.
they were all emulated as well, but with a caveat because every single game had its own emulation core specifically designed for that game. Because the N64 is still, even to this day, perfect emulation, it's kind of finicky. It's kind of hard to get without like using specific, plugins and modifications to get it like perfect. So basically, Nintendo built N64 emulator cores specifically to every single game, and unfortunately, it's not really usable, interchangeable with other games. But I want to actually get your opinion about emulation as a whole in this particular case. Do you think it's fair necessarily for Nintendo to ask its fans for $60 for 3 emulated games?
I mean, I think as long as the performance is fine, then I don't see why not. Yeah, like I mean, I don't think most fans care about the effort that they put into it, and as long as, I mean, then again, I would argue you could make the argument that say 64 wasn't put into widescreen and
Yep.
stuff like that. So maybe, so yeah, I mean, you could argue stuff like that. That if it's a bit of a shabby product, then asking for $60 is a lot. I think if they were emulated and had slight enhancements to them, I mean, I would say that's totally fair. Yeah, it doesn't really matter exactly how much effort Nintendo puts into it. They still own the games. They can still do whatever they like with them and try to get however much they can. And I mean, $20 per game isn't a horrible price, I don't think, for those 3. It's maybe a bit high, but even on the Virtual Console by itself, I mean, Mario 64 was 10, I think, on the Wii and the Wii U. So, I don't know, maybe it's a bit, but they did also have to put work into changing over some of the controls for Sunshine and Galaxy.
It also has like a higher resolution async, but those are injected in real time into the emulators, which was a very interesting thing I found
I
out.
think that Nintendo can get away with it. Clearly they are. Clearly they're making money off of it. From a selfish consumer point of view, I think that it's ridiculous that they are charging this much for it, but also they can get away with it because, price and demand. People are willing to pay $60 for these games, then they're willing to do that. But it reminds me of say Crash Bandicoot when that they remade those 3 games from the ground up and then sold the trilogy for 40, was it $40, I think? Not Nintendo, obviously. Activision. Yeah, I was gonna say Naughty Dog, but yeah, Activision did it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then same thing for Spyro. Remade the whole thing, completely different, 40-ish bucks. Now Nintendo is porting to emulating 2 of them and half emulating the other, and they're charging full retail price. Well, full retail price for now. We'll see what happens at the end of this year. We'll talk about that a little later probably, but I don't know. I I understand why they're doing it. If I was them, I'd probably do the same thing. I would lazily port the games. I mean, if you're willing to pay for it, you're willing to pay for it. And if you try to emulate it, I'll just send you a cease and desist. So I don't know. I understand why they're doing it, but from my selfish consumer standpoint, I don't, it doesn't sit well with me.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the price is definitely high, but it's not completely
Exactly.
out of line with what they charge for their other games. Like they've done this when they ported Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze over. I think that was
Mhm.
a full price game. I think Mario Kart Deluxe was a full price game. So, in the realm of what they normally charge, I don't really think it's that out of bounds. Like I said, like the whole emulation thing, I get why people say like, well, that's lazy of Nintendo, and sure, I guess it is, but if the product is the same, then I don't know, then it doesn't really make a difference how much of the effort they put into it. You're paying for the quality of the product, not the effort that they put in.
Yeah, I should clarify that I'm not at all surprised that they did this. Definitely, it definitely lines up with
No.
Nintendo history, but just like Donkey Kong Country and just like Mario Kart 8, I didn't think that those had to also be $60 on the Nintendo Switch. I get it, they made money off of
Yeah.
it, but it's, you know, that's just how I feel comparing it to other consoles and other developers, how they're re putting more effort in and selling it for less and still making a butt ton of money. But Nintendo can get away with things that others can't, I suppose.
No, yeah, they definitely put a premium on their products that almost the same way Apple does. People are just happy to pay
True.
for the Nintendo
Yeah.
tax you'd call it. Yeah, I don't know, and I mean I think maybe it's less justifiable with Donkey Kong and Mario Kart that they cost so much because they had only been out on the previous console, and those games don't have like the same importance in the history of gaming as something like Mario 64 and Galaxy and Sunshine to a lesser extent. Like these are big important games that there's certainly a higher demand for than there was Tropical Freeze or even Mario Kart 8, which I think maybe justifies the higher cost a little bit. Not in a moral way. I mean, it should be cheaper, but I can understand where they're coming from a little bit more, and I think more people will be willing to pay that much for these ones.
What I think is even more immoral are well, this is obviously a limited release, but people are taking advantage of that and just buying up a ton of physical copies, knowing that they're gonna resell them later.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh yeah.
I get why they do it, and I know some people who are doing it, but I'm not, I'm not about that. I have the same problem with all of the PS5, Xbox Series X pre-orders being just sort of gulped up by bots, but that's a little too far off topic.
Sorry, I was gonna say I think that thing with the bots that happened with the NVIDIA graphics cards
It
too, didn't
did.
it? A lot of them, the amiibo have been notorious for getting fucking scalped and just torn apart by people too. Like a couple of them are still going for $50 and $60. Some of the ones that only ever released in Japan are still at like 350, I think.
Hmm.
Like Nintendo just breeds these horrible scalping products.
Yeah, well, at what point do you blame them and instead just blame the scalpers? They justify it, hey, we have the money to do it, we might as well. I gotta spend money to make money. It's like, well, all right, I guess, but
Mm, yeah, fair enough,
it's
but
not my
it's
cup
pretty
of tea.
crappy.
I like to think that we're like secretly like yelling at the Allen John, like he's like, oh man, I gotta stop scalping everything.
No, no, no. Why would you think I'd have? No, no. I didn't buy 50 copies of 3D Mario All Stars. No, what?
He's like
No.
pulling his shirt collar. Ooh, it's getting a little hot in here.
Yeah, quickly changing his name on eBay, editing out all the ads for his eBay listing he took out of the old podcast.
He's frantically looking up how to buy stock in NVIDIA. Oh man. So how about this? Oh wait, do you have anything else to say on this? Yeah.
I just want, from like a technical point of view, to say that if you think about it, emulation really isn't that bad because um, it's probably the best way you could get the most authentic experience out of those games through emulation. Because I suppose if you just ported like the source code, you'd have to, play through the entire game and see if any bugs come out if from the game just running at 60 FPS. Because who knows how those games are built? I mean, we already know how Mario 64 is built, frankly, but
Yeah.
with Mario Sunshine. Who knows? Actually, probably people know because there were cheats that you could use on Mario Sunshine on the Wii to unlock 60 FPS. So I don't know though if any.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't know if any glitches or bugs pop out when, because game logic is oftenly tied to frame rates. So who knows if you change the resolution to 16.9, maybe it breaks the game. It doesn't. Who knows? Maybe if you make Mario 64 run at 1080p 60 FPS, what if something breaks? What if the game's not beatable? It isn't. It works fine. But this is Nintendo thinking. They probably don't want to experiment much, so they go the good old trusted route. Just you take the game, you go to a ROM site, you download the game, it's already yours. You don't care.
Which ROM site?
Oh, I would love it if Nintendo of Japan employees were posting on GBAtemp, like, where are the links to the ROM sites, and we had to keep banning them.
Yeah, that actually makes sense. Because have the hackers found out, are the ROMs scene ROMs, or are they just like internal ROMs?
I'm not sure. I know the Sunshine one, it was trimmed somehow. I think it was noted as like Stardust trimmed, I think. Something. I didn't 100% know what that means.
Oh, wow.
That was something I meant to look into, but yeah.
Yeah, because I think that happened like once with some other Nintendo games. They might have just gotten a little bit better at it and just removed all notions in the code that this was like from who, like, lame fuck.
Yeah.
Anybody remembers that guy?
No, I do remember that happening though. Yeah, there was some re-release of the original Super Mario Bros. That people figured out was downloaded from a ROM site.
Oh yeah, I do remember that. Yeah.
That wasn't nice.
Yeah. Yeah. So just quickly on those games, I haven't been able to put a ton of time into them, but I do want to talk mainly about Super Mario Galaxy, because that one obviously was played on the Wii. For anyone who's not familiar with it, you use the pointer controls a lot in it. There's a little star that you can move around on the screen, and you can use it to pick up little collectibles, and then you can shoot them at enemies using the pointer. And you also use it every now and then to you can sort of like tap at these little stars that'll pick you up and move you around and stuff. Yeah. And so the way they do that on the Switch is, if you're playing handheld, you need to tap at the screen, which works well in terms of accuracy, but it's a little awkward because you sort of need to like either lurch your thumbs over, and depending on how big your hands are, you might have trouble reaching the center of the screen, or you just need to take your hand off part of the controller to tap at the screen, which is a little awkward. And if you're playing with the if you're playing in docked mode, you need to use, it uses the, what's it called? The gyroscope, I think, in the controller. So you need to sort of like rotate the controller around, and that acts as an internal pointer. It's not, it works better than it sounds like it would, but it's not super comfortable because you need to like sit very still, and if you hit R, it'll recenter the pointer into the middle of the screen for you, which is convenient. But I found I was constantly having to recenter the thing so that I could move a little every time I wanted to grab something. There was no consistency with it, because playing with the pointer controls, it feels very natural. Like, you always have an idea of where your thing is on screen because you're pointing it right. I don't know if it's inherently more accurate using the sensor bar and the pointer, or if it just makes more sense to your brain to have something pointed right at the TV, and that just clicks more with your hand-eye coordination, or what. But I found I constantly had to be recentering my thing, and I constantly was like rotating and doing big exaggerated movements, and I would miss the star bits I was trying to collect a lot, and then have to circle back around to grab them. And it's I don't know, it works, but it's not super comfortable. And I think it's an interesting conversation, because people have been talking for a long time about all these gimmicks that Nintendo uses and how it makes game preservation really hard, and it makes it harder to carry these games forward into new generations. And this is kind of the first time they've tried to move forward a Wii game to something that doesn't have that, because even Wii U, you could still use Wiimotes with it. I think Metroid Prime Trilogy did that on Wii U. So I don't know, I think there's an interesting conversation to be had there, because they made a really good effort at it, and it is better than I think anyone expected. Oh, I should also mention that the shake controls are disabled when you're playing on docked mode. Normally in Mario Galaxy on the Wii, you would shake the Wiimote to attack, and now you just hit Y, because if you shake while trying to use the gyroscope to point, obviously that would throw it off balance. But I don't know. Do you guys have any thoughts on that? On Nintendo trying to preserve these weird not gimmicky, but these games that revolve around very specific hardware functions?
I'm just trying to think if that's, of course, it's a little clunky. It would have to be, but I can't think of an alternative design of a different way for that they could have handled it that would have been better, right?
I can't think of another way they could have done it either. And like I said, it works better than you'd expect, but it's never really going to be that great. It's never going to be the best way to play that game.
There actually is a way to make it work. You rebuild the game from the ground up without reusing assets, and you just, those gameplay elements, you just substitute them with something else or just remove them completely, you know.
That is what they did with the Wind Waker when they basically remade that the GameCube game for the Wii U. There was there was the tuner thing, I think that's what it was called, where in the GameCube you basically there was like this thing where you could connect your Game Boy Advance to it and you could do some cool Wind Waker stuff using your Game Boy Advance. They kind of just sort of got rid of that in the Wii U version. But that is probably more okay for them to do because that was just sort of a really side thing. Whereas the things that Steven's talking about, they're kind of built into the gameplay. Like I'm wondering what they're going to do with Skyward Sword if they ever port that over to the Switch. Because that thing was entirely motion controls. They could probably figure something out, but you can't just that game was clearly made for the Wii and it'll play a little weirder no matter what you do. I know that you can emulate it right now on your PC and that you can use, regular controllers for it, but it's still not quite the same.
Hmm.
So Nintendo kind of did dig itself into a ditch in terms of preserving these games, but at the same time, um, I don't think they have a problem with doing that because if you're always worried about, well, we can't innovate too much because then we can't preserve it, then really, what's the point of ever trying to innovate? Yeah.
Speaking of Nintendo never trying to innovate, I don't know if this is a good segue.
That works.
This week we had another direct from Nintendo, a third-party direct.
5 weeks running.
Yeah, partner showcase, and this partner showcase started strong with Monster Hunter games, like 2 of them announced. I don't care, I don't play Monster Hunter. I don't even have a Switch. Guys, what do you think of the partner showcase and the games announced?
I watched it live, and there really wasn't anything to get excited about with it. Yeah, I didn't latch on to anything here. There's a couple games that I hadn't heard of before that look kind of interesting, but they still didn't give a lot of information. Almost all of them are coming out next year, so.
Are you telling me you're not hyped for PGA Tours 2021, the ultimate golf experience now on the Switch?
I'm not gonna lie, that was one of the highlights of the direct for me. Just because it seemed, I don't know. It was just a very straightforward, simple golf game. If that's like a cheap little game you can pick up on the eShop, I would probably play that. That seems nice and straightforward for me.
I think that golf game probably needs a Monster Hunter crossover. If it does that, then I'll be hyped. Other than that, I was lukewarm about the whole thing. I concur with everything that Steven said. It was just sort of nothing really grabbed at me. I do like Monster Hunter games, but I like the main series ones, and these just kind of feel not right to me. So,
Isn't this one a main series one?
but also I don't have a Switch, so I don't really care that much anyway.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. So I should mention there were a few games that are kind of bigger, and I think maybe it's just blind spots for the 3 of us. The 2 that stick out, well, 3 actually. Disgaea 6 is coming out, which is a tactical RPG game that's, I think, decently big. Like, it's kind of niche over here, but I think it's bigger in Japan, and there are people that care about it. So that's coming out. That's a Switch exclusive next summer, I think. And Rune Factory 5 is coming out
yeah.
next year, which is kind of a combination of Harvest Moon and, I don't know, just any monster hunting dungeon crawler RPG. Rune Factory is supposed to be really good. I haven't played the games and I don't know much about this one specifically. And then Ori and the Will of the Wisps came out on Switch the day of the presentation, which is cool. But I mean, the last one was already out on Switch, so there's still a bit of novelty to an Xbox Game Studios game showing up on Switch, but it's not as stunning as it was when it happened the first time, right? So, I don't know. They're worth mentioning. Those are names that people will probably care about. There were 2 other games announced that look kind of interesting, but there's still just not a ton of information on them. The one was a 3D platformer called Ballin Wonderworld, I think, which you basically, I think you switch your costumes on your character to get different abilities, but essentially you have a couple different characters to choose from, and you can swap between them at any time to work through the level. That looks interesting. It's got a fun gimmick, and there's not a ton of 3D platformers anymore. And then there's another tactical RPG coming out called Empire of Sin, but it's set during Prohibition, which is sort of interesting. It's coming out at the end of the year. I don't think there's a ton of information out on it yet, really, but I don't know, a tactical RPG set in like 1920s Chicago where you're fighting like Al Capone, and it kind of sounds cool. I'm into that. It could very easily go south, but it's an interesting gimmick. Or premise, I guess.
It really is. So
yeah, but there's not a lot to say about it.
yeah, I just don't understand why we didn't see footage from the Breath of the Wild sequel in this. Like, I know it's a partner showcase, but come on, Nintendo. Why wasn't there any Metroid Prime 4 news? Like, I don't get it. What about Odyssey 2? Is that ever happening? Nintendo, what are you doing? Please. I need a major announcement every single week. Otherwise, I don't know. Maybe I'll switch to Sony. Speaking of, Sony had their PlayStation 5 showcase, and guess what? They actually showed games. Wow, that's unbelievable.
Who'd have thunk it?
Yeah, Nintendo. Yeah.
Funny enough, I went into that showcase only caring about one thing, that single thing being how much the PlayStation 5 was going to be, and I'll get to that in a second. But seeing all of the games did sort of invoke some kind of feelings inside of me, some actual excitement for the first time that I've had in a while. So I liked the games that they showcased. We could talk about those a little later, but I went into it, as I'm sure most everybody else went into it, wondering, what is the price of the PS5 going to be? Just came out, Microsoft just announced the cost of the Xbox Series X and the cost of the Xbox Series S. Now, PlayStation, balls in your court. What are you gonna do? You gonna undercut them? You gonna go $50 cheaper? You gonna go a single dollar cheaper? But what do they end up doing? Nothing.
Nope.
PlayStation 5 disc version $499. Discless version $399. Sounds like a great value. You get $100 cheaper for the discless version. Of course, you don't get any discs though. But I don't know. They could have used this opportunity, I think, to undersell Microsoft by $20, $10, anything. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, it's not exactly a straight comparison either, because the PlayStation 5 does have the same specs or the digital one has the same specs as the discless one. It's not like it's a weaker console, so. But I understand that most people looking at it aren't going to see that. They're just going to see that it's $100 more than the S.
Yeah.
So I honestly doubt they'd ever undercut it like by 20. The least amount would be 50, but that's not the thing. They're definitely selling their PlayStation 5 discless at a loss because that disk drive does not cost $100. All right, we don't know any specifications about the memory capacity. I suppose it's going to be just like with the Series S, that the digital only version is going to have half the amount of storage as the disc one.
Actually, the storage is 825 gigs on both of them.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yep.
Okay, that's interesting. I did not know that. Okay. So yeah, that basically cements it further that the digital version is something that they're selling at a loss because that disk drive does not cost um, $100, which this is a smart move, really, by PlayStation because they're gonna probably recoup their losses through, online sales with the digital version. And speaking of those online sales, we have our first base prices for the launch titles for the PlayStation 5, and it ain't cheap.
Yeah,
Nope.
Starts around $70, and that's just for the Americans. In Europe, you're gonna have to pay 79.
Yeah. Canadian has gone up to $89.
yeah. Well, the thing is, so the digital version of the PS5, I think, yeah, they're definitely selling it at a loss, but I think that Sony's going to make more money off of those consoles than they're going to make off of the disc versions because when you get the discless version, you're stuck in their digital online ecosystem. And I most of my games are digital, but I do have a couple physical ones. I think in the long run, eh, if you were to go for which one's a better value, it's probably the disc version. You're paying $100 more upfront, but then you still have the entire used game market at your disposal. You get to buy games cheap, you get to sell them cheap. Um, Not always cheap, but the digital version, your
Yeah.
all of your money is going to go to Sony, and they have a lot of digital sales, a lot more than say Nintendo, where their games never go on sale. Uh, so I'm not saying that it's a bad value to get the 399 one, especially because it's not a strict comparison to the Xbox Series S, which is it's not a weak console, but it's a weaker version of the Series X. But I also see that the PS5 games and the Xbox Series blah games are going to be $70. That doesn't, surprisingly, doesn't bother me too much when I think about the fact that games have been $60 since the 80s, right? Didn't it cost $80 to get the ET game for the Atari 2600?
Yeah, and what happened after that? Do you know history? You know what happened after they tried to sell ET for
I do. It's in a
$60?
giant landfill.
No, no, no. There was a video game crash. There was a huge video game crash.
That's what I'm saying. And all the games ended up in a landfill as part of the video game crash, and then Nintendo came and saved them. But the prices have still been $60 flat since the 80s, since video games were video games.
I would argue that the cost is going up though because there's so many more like the content is getting carved up between different things and you have to pay more for special editions and there's microtransactions and DLC and it doesn't feel like you're getting as much in a base game as you used to and you have to pay all these extra add-ons and the base price being 60 doesn't feel like that's the cost you need to really get a full game at this point
I see
anymore.
what you mean.
So I mean if this $10 price increase means that we're going to get less of that, I would be on board for it. I don't trust publishers to do that, but yeah, I don't know. I don't really agree that games cost $60 anymore because anytime you buy one, there's always more purchases down the line. Unless, I mean, maybe if you wait, a few years for the complete edition and then wait for the complete edition to go down in price.
Yeah, I don't think that our opinions are any different. I think that we're on the same page there, where the obviously they are doing these microtransactions because um, they want to make more money because games cost more to make than they used to. Well, I might be totally wrong. I don't know what I'm talking about. But raising it to $70 is going to discourage those practices at all. I hope that it didn't come across that way. But I just I understand why they're making it 70 because again, it's like the Nintendo selling 3D All-Stars for $60. They can get away with it. They're gonna make it $70 because we're gonna buy them for $70. And
Yeah.
that's what's gonna happen. And then we're still gonna buy the DLCs, still buy the microtransactions. We're gonna keep giving them money because that's what we do as consumers. But that's also, again, why I want to get the disc version because I sort of want to not always have to pay $70 for these games. But I feel like this might be the last cycle where that's an option. Rest in peace, GameStop.
Yeah, it's Yeah, we might be coming to the end of that era because there were rumors about the PS4 and Xbox One not having disk drives, and that never ended up happening. But now, I don't know. Yeah, I wonder if the next console cycle will even have them. And well, I mean, we're talking about 7 or 8 years in the future. GameStop might be gone before then anyway. So
GameStop might be gone like next week. It's not even a joke. It's true.
no,
And there's just two things I'd like to say about these price points. First, this is something I read on Twitter. Under no circumstances should Nintendo hear about this. They cannot know that you can sell games at $70. Please. They shouldn't find out about this. That's the first thing.
that's fair.
Second thing. The last time I paid full price for a game was for Deus Ex Mankind Divided. I don't know if you heard about it, but I loved Human Resolution.
Human resolution. Human DLSS.
Human anti-aliasing. Yeah, no. Deus Ex, the first one, I loved that game. I loved Human Revolution. It was a really, really good prequel game thing, reboot, whatever. Mankind Divided felt like half of a game. No, it felt more like a third of a game, really. It was still good, but it was really short and kind of unfinished and unpolished as well. So that was the last time I paid full price for a game. And yeah, other than that, all the games that I've played, it's not like I'm pirating them. No, I actually just buy them when they're on sale, like for $10, for $20. So I don't really know, because I'm a PC gamer, how are the prices, like, are there even sales on Xbox and PlayStation?
Oh yeah, pretty frequently. It's maybe not. I mean, I don't know. I would say they're like honestly fairly comparable with Steam because I've had my foot in PC gaming for a little while, and I'm more into it now than I was before. But I still keep an eye on all the console sales and the Steam sales, and maybe Steam sales are a bit more frequent just because there's so many more things there, and there's so many indie publishers, and they can constantly push stuff out. But honestly, for like the big titles, yeah, I would say they're pretty comparable. It's almost the same.
Yeah, and a lot of big titles on PS4 they have sales, but then they permanently go down in price as well. Like you can get big games, God of War, Bloodborne, Horizon Zero Dawn for dirt cheap. Whereas yeah, it's not like I said, it's not like Mario Kart 8 where you're still paying full price. Then there's some games like Grand Theft Auto 5, which has been around forever, and that's still not really gone down in price.
I
Oh,
think
is it
it's
40
40.
now?
I think it's 40 or
Okay.
50. Yeah, they do
You
do.
completely forgot when it was free on the Epic Game Store, like
Yeah.
for a couple of days. Yeah.
Yeah. That's something, but even that's relatively new, and that's just because Epic's trying to make a name. And that's the other thing. Like, so the sales on PS4 and Xbox are very good as far as I can tell. But if we go into an environment where there's no discs in their consoles anymore and there's no competition, who knows if they'll keep that up, right? Because, I mean, first party ones, maybe not if they want to keep pushing consoles. Third party ones, I would be less confident that they would keep doing those big sales on. But then again, they do them on Steam, and a lot of those games are exclusive to Steam anyway, so they don't necessarily need to do them, right? Or if they're on Steam and GOG, or on Steam and Epic Games Store, it'll have the same sale on both of them, so I don't know. Maybe those sales will keep up, maybe they won't. It's hard to tell.
Another thing about the PS5 that isn't surprising, but we sort of found out yesterday, I believe, was that it will indeed be backwards compatible with the PS4, which is nice, and as we all expected. But also, as we all expected, it won't be backwards compatible with the PS1, 2, or 3. Kind of upsetting, not at all surprising. Just some information for you. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I think what they said, what they meant was that there's no native backwards compatibility, which is really obvious. Still, there's nothing stopping them from creating like a PlayStation 1 or even a PlayStation 2 emulator for the PS5 for like specific games.
Well, they've kind of been doing that with the
ports.
PS4 anyway. They've had these PS2 classics on the PlayStation Store for a while with full trophy support and everything. So
Yeah, and those are emulated. So there's that. The big question is the PlayStation 3, because that's the gray sheep. That's the black sheep of the entire console lineup, because even on PC, it's difficult to emulate that thing. So without like what they did, actually no, they didn't do that with the PS3. I was confusing the PS3 with the PS2, where they put like a PS2 and a PS3 in the launch model for backwards compatibility. So unless they get some cell processors that they have, somewhere, and just put them in PS5s, you're not gonna get like PlayStation 3 backwards compatibility unless you find this super talented programmer that somehow understands the cell architecture by hand perfectly and could write like a flawless emulator for the PlayStation 5. I doubt it. It's just much easier to take all the good PlayStation 3 games, exclusives, like what are there, 2 or 3, I don't know, and just port them.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say. Most of them are already ported. Last of Us is ported to PS4. Demon Souls is coming. Dark Souls is already gone. I believe Dark Souls 2 is. Yeah.
There's only one left.
Metal Gear Solid 4?
Yep, Metal Gear Solid 4. I've played all the Metal Gear Solids except Metal Gear Solid 4. I want to play that game so bad. I have no possible way to.
It's frustrating. I'm in the same boat. Yeah. Actually, I do have a PS3 upstairs, but I guess I could play it, but I don't know. Yeah, it's frustrating, and with everything going on with Konami, who knows if they'll ever get around to porting that. I mean,
probably ported to a pachinko machine.
Yeah, probably. Pachinko machine, and every time you play, you have to watch a 90-minute cutscene after you.
You still don't have the entire God of War collection on the PS4, unfortunately. So you still got to play a lot of those old ones on the PS2 or 3. So.
Well, 1 and 2 were on the PS2, weren't they? And then God of War 3 was ported to the PS4. So.
Yeah, but yeah.
So they're not stranded on the PS3.
They're not stranded on the PS3, no.
The PS3 is, not in terms of sales or anything, but in terms of like games just getting lost there, is a little bit like Sony's Wii U, where everything has to have been like ported over, especially just to get it off that system.
Yeah.
Speaking of God of War, what do you guys think of the titles announced at the PS5 showcase?
God of War at the end. That was all I needed. Once I heard that gruff voice, I got shivers up my spine, and it was weird because I was like, I know that I'm not going to see anything about this, but just hearing that and knowing that it exists, or that it's going to exist in 2021, I know I shouldn't get so hyped, but I did get hyped by that. I also got hyped by Final Fantasy 16, and what else got me? Those were the only two that I didn't know about.
I was gonna say, though, almost everything else we knew about already. Even God of War, I think, was, people almost took it as a given. But yeah, I'm looking at everything else here. Like, there's a special edition of DMC5. Fortnite's getting ported. Demon Souls we knew about. Oh, there was a Five Nights at Freddy game announced, but
yeah, there was a fun thing with that Five Nights at Freddy's game, because I was watching it live and I was looking at the chat, and people speculated at first that it was the long-awaited and rumored Silent Hill game that Sony supposedly was working on, and then people just like started writing, nah, it's probably like something like FNAF or whatever.
oh.
It turns out, yeah, that's actually FNAF. And the same thing happened to me when in the end they were doing the God of War teaser, because it starts with like ash or, I don't know, snow falling, and everybody knows Silent Hill. That's the thing. It's like snow, but it's not actually snow. Spoiler: it's ashes, I think.
God of War could have been snow or ash because it's taking place. Well, ash is an important part of God of War because that's what's on his skin, but then it's also taking place in winter during Ragnarok. So it could be either.
Yeah. So and also very very big title that was announced that has been rumored for around 2 years, I think. The Harry Potter game, Hogwarts Legacy. Steven, I know you're a big Harry Potter fan. What did you think of that? Like, are you hyped at all?
We don't even have time to get into my thoughts, dude. That's a whole other podcast for how passionate I am about the Harry Potter series. Why don't we move on to someone else? Don't even get me started.
Well, as somebody who actually is very into the Harry Potter series, that also got me hyped. I was waiting for Steven's opinion on it first. Yeah, that's it. No, I'm just kidding. It looked good to me. I have, ever since I was a kid, wanted a big Harry Potter game, a big open world Harry Potter game. And we sort of got those with um, Sorcerer's Stone, Chamber of Secrets, and Prisoner of Azkaban for like the various consoles that they were on. And then they just kind of got terrible after that. And then there's the mobile game, which is absolute garbage trash.
Yeah.
But this seems like it'll actually. I don't want to say it'll be good because it might be another horrible situation. But it taking place in the 1800s is good to me because it means that we're not stomping on sort of any other lore. We don't have to deal with the same story beats that we've dealt with over and over again, but it's still modern enough that it's the Hogwarts that we could recognize. I think that even people who don't care about the series that much, everybody thinks, oh, what would it be like if I went to Hogwarts? If I was in the sorting, what house would I be sorted in? What stuff would I do? Where would I visit? All of that stuff. So I'm hoping that this game um, can deliver on all that because the closest we have to an open world Harry Potter game, now that it just occurred to me, is Lego Harry Potter, and those are good, but I want something a little more meat, and hopefully this will satisfy that urge that I forgot about several years ago. I haven't been feeling that urge to have an open world Harry Potter thing for years, and now all of a sudden it's here, and that spark is back. So I feel like a kid again. So I allowed myself during this showcase to feel these emotions that I normally wouldn't have felt. I was like, "Oh, God of War, I'm so excited! Harry Potter, I'm so excited! Oh my God, another Final Fantasy!" All those things, and I'm setting myself up for disappointment for at least two of those.
Yeah.
Not God of War because that's gonna be great, but yeah, I let my inner child out. So thank you for that, Sony. It's been a
Yeah.
while. It's been since what, 2016,
Yeah.
since I felt any sort of feelings about video games.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. That's great, honestly. I get that during the best Nintendo Directs, just that like absolute giddiness where like when they announced Joker for Smash Bros, I had like the biggest dumbest grin plastered across my face and was just like excited and bouncing around and like couldn't wait to talk to people
Yeah.
about it. So I understand where you're coming with that. Just that like inner child. Yeah. I will say about Harry Potter, even as someone that doesn't care about the series, I do like that it's not connected to the main books or the main story like you were saying, because it is an interesting world to explore, and you're going to be leaving Hogwarts and seeing the rest of the world. So this kind of like very, I don't know, just this world that's consumed with magic and wizards would be fun to explore, and I feel like it not being bogged down with the central story is going to make it a little bit more accessible to people like me. I feel the same way I do about it with some of the Star Wars spin-offs. Like I don't care about Star Wars, but I like Rogue One, so being able to pop into there and getting out of the Skywalker saga and getting away from seeing what life is like for the average person under the rule of the Empire is fun, and this seems like it might explore some other aspects of the wizarding world, which is interesting.
Yeah, and it'll still feel familiar because I don't know if you know this, but the wizarding world in Harry Potter in the 20th and 21st century still feels like it's in the 19th century. They haven't advanced in the same way that, the Muggles have. So having this take place in the late 1800s will actually feel like it could have taken place in the late 1900s, which is when,
Yeah.
Harry Potter was at school.
Okay.
So, yeah, At most, we might get a Dumbledore cameo. I think he was a kid at that point, so maybe he's a classmate. But other than that, it seems like everything else is going to be different, which I appreciate because all the other games, even the ones that don't revolve around Harry Potter, such as the mobile game, um, take place like either slightly before or slightly after the main 7 years that we followed ad nauseum.
Yeah, hopefully it doesn't lean too deep into the main lore of the series by like having little jokes about setting up things in the future or making little coy references to the main series. That can get really annoying too. I've seen
Hmm.
a couple different properties do that. Hopefully it is not afraid to establish its own identity.
Oh yeah, well, something that actually bugged me about it that I read about. Well, I guess it doesn't really bug me, but it starts. I'm pretty sure that you, as the protagonist, are already in your fourth year. I think you're supposed to be a transfer student to Hogwarts. That kind of makes me a little sad because I would have liked to be there the whole time. But I guess they have reasons. They don't want you to be a little kid at the beginning. They want you to start off as a teenager, do all that romance stuff. I don't know. But
Oh yeah, 14-year-old romance. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I
hey,
want.
hey,
Love it.
you know about Harry Potter enough to know that yeah, that's definitely part of it.
They could have done it like a fast forward through your early years though, like how Fallout 3 starts with you being born and it sort of like runs through your childhood really quickly. Like if it had done like a quick Twine version of your first few years at Hogwarts, just to sort of establish a little bit of your background. But I guess then it's hard to do the audience surrogate thing where like the game is going to have to open with them explaining all the basics to you. So, but I guess I guess you don't need that in a video game. People are used to getting tutorials and stuff like that. And where if it was a movie, you'd need an audience surrogate. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the reasoning behind it is like they want you to already know how to cast spells and stuff, and a fourth year would know how to do that.
Yeah,
But
but again,
uh,
they could just skip past the early years. I do think the idea of a transfer
yeah.
student is interesting though. Like, are you from America and you're a wizard there, and then you have to go to like your parents move you to England, so you have to find a new wizard school? Like, I find I find the cross section of the very mundane with the magical sort of fun and interesting there. Like, that's sort of interesting, I guess. If that's how it happens, I don't know. Should we talk about the PlayStation Plus collection?
What was there to talk about the PlayStation Plus collection? Like, you get all the previous games you owned on PlayStation 4, and now you can play them on PlayStation 5 with a subscription, right? Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's the same subscription.
It's Sony's half-assed attempt at a Game Pass, essentially. And like, there was some speculation when they first announced it. They never made a distinction as to whether or not this is the backwards compatibility that they've always been talking about. It seems like now that it isn't, but they still haven't said anything definitive. But it seems like backwards compatibility will exist separate from this PlayStation Plus collection. But the thing that stuck out to me, I don't know if you want to get into it or we can ignore it, but the thing that stuck out to me is that they chose a lot of games that are really old and a lot of, like, not the newest versions in their series. Like, they chose Mortal Kombat 10, but you can't get Mortal Kombat 11. There's Persona 5, but not Persona 5 Royal. Like, it's really kind of a crappy selection of games. Like, you have Uncharted 4, but not the Nathan Drake collection. You've got Days Gone and Last Guardian, neither one of which went over very well. I don't know, it's such a strange assortment of games they chose to give to people. It really is, and only 15 games it pales in comparison to Game Pass anyway, but just for how crappy the selection is, I don't know. If this is their big attempt.
Yeah. On the flip side, imagine that you've never had a Sony console in your life and you're switching from Xbox over there. Boom, there's a big collection of games that you haven't played before. So, well, not all of them you haven't played before, but that's sort of
I mean,
I,
sure, but think about if you're switching from Sony to Xbox, and then when you get your Xbox, you have hundreds of games that you've never played
oh,
before, and
100%.
they're actually worth playing. I mean,
Yeah.
like
Well, yeah.
Bloodborne and Until Dawn are worth playing. Honestly, other than that, like maybe Persona 5, maybe, but Royal is the more definitive version, and I don't know, like. I don't know. There are some decent games in there. It's just such a half-assed attempt to fight Game Pass. They really could have had something more impressive lined up to start with. I mean, it was never going to start as strong as Game Pass, but this is really bad. This is not a good collection.
Yeah, I don't think that it's. I agree with you that it's a poor attempt at emulating Game Pass, and I'm just trying to find. These games are good, I guess,
Yeah.
but they're also dirt cheap already. So I don't know. You're not saving a whole lot. Like I think I got God of War for like $3. So
Yeah. Yeah, Persona 5 is 20 and usually goes on sale for 10. Like Fallout 4 is dirt cheap. Bloodborne I know is cheap. Like yeah. And I mean, I guess so it does look like it's not an additional subscription. They haven't said if they're going to increase the price of PlayStation Plus, which would also is also another thing because they might not give you the option to not take this collection and then they'll increase the price of PlayStation Plus by justifying it with these games, but hopefully.
didn't they increase the price of PlayStation Plus like last year or the year before? It was relatively recently that they bumped
I believe
it up.
they did, yeah. So they probably won't do it again, but maybe they will, and now they'll try and justify it with this.
Oh boy. I was hoping that they would merge PlayStation Plus with PS Now or something like that, but that seems to not be the case.
No, and yeah, and that's the other thing. This now confuses PlayStation Now because PlayStation Now is a streaming service, but you can download some of them, but not all of them. And now this is a PlayStation Plus thing that lets you download games but not stream them, and it's still a separate subscription. Like they're really confusing their messaging here, and not for a lot of benefit. It's a bad move on their part. I mean, I'm glad they're trying to start something, but it's not very good.
Speaking of starting something, we could speak about stopping something. And I say that I love you guys and I love talking to you guys so much, but I'm tired of you right now. So,
all right. I feel that.
That's the podcast. Thank you for watching, everybody. We love you. Like, comment, subscribe. Follow that bell. Click that icon. Subscribe to my Twitter accounts at GBAtemp Twitter accounts, and then go.
That's not your Twitter account.
And then like my Facebook page at GBAtemp. And
you're not GBAtemp.
This is GBAtemp man signing off. Bye.
Bye.
Good night.